The legend of Blackwood Manor in the village of Dunwich. An eerie legend lingered about the abandoned manor on the outskirts of town. Blackwood Manor had once been the residence of Elias Blackwood, a man shrouded in mystery and suspicion. Known for his vast knowledge of ancient texts and occult practices, Elias was rumored to have sought more than just knowledge. He sought power. His obsession with immortality led him to delve into the darkest of magics, performing rituals that were whispered to involve the summoning of demonic entities. The villagers avoided speaking of him in detail, but the air around the manor was thick with fear. The manor itself was a decaying relic of its former grandeur, its windows boarded up, its grounds overrun with weeds and ivy. Though no one dared to speak of it openly, there were rumors that Elias had successfully invoked a dark force, a demon from an ancient realm. Some believed that he had been trying to trap the demon in order to gain eternal life, but something had gone horribly wrong. One stormy night, as the wind howled through the trees and the rain battered the old stones, Elias Blackwood disappeared. No one ever found his body, nor did they find any trace of his dark experiments. The manor was left behind untouched, but it was clear that the ritual had failed in a catastrophic way. The villagers swore that something evil still lingered within the manor's walls, that the curse of Blackwood had not only claimed Elias, but also bound his soul to the manor. Some believed the demon had taken him as payment for his pact, and others whispered that the manor itself had become a gateway for dark forces, forever bound to the world. Over time, Blackwood Manor became a place of fearful reverence. Every villager had heard the stories, the lights that flickered in the windows at night, the eerie sounds that echoed through the trees, the sense that something or someone was watching from behind the broken walls. Yet despite the legend, no one dared approach the manor. No one, that is, except for Anna. Anna had always been intrigued by the supernatural. Growing up in Dunwich, she'd heard the terrifying tales about Blackwood Manor, the rumors about Elias Blackwood's dark practices, his supposed pact with a demon, and the curse that lingered in the ruins. Unlike the other villagers who spoke of the manor with fear, Anna found herself fascinated by the mystery surrounding it. The thought of uncovering the truth behind the stories filled her with excitement. Most of the people she knew were content to let the manor remain a dark legend, but not Anna. She couldn't resist the pull of the unknown. One evening, after a long day of work, Anna gathered her courage and decided to venture to the manor. Her friends had warned her against it, some even pleading with her not to go, but their fear only fueled her curiosity. The idea of exploring the manor herself was too tempting to ignore. They told her that anyone who went near it never returned the same, and that the curse of Blackwood was real. But Anna was undeterred. She wanted to see for herself, to uncover the truth behind the place that haunted their village. That night, the storm clouds rolled in thick and fast, and the wind began to pick up. Anna stood at the edge of the manor's property, staring up at its towering structure. It loomed over her like a great hungry beast, its windows dark and hollow. The gate, rusted and creaking, swung open as if beckoning her in. With a quick, nervous breath, Anna stepped forward. The closer she got, the more oppressive the air felt. It was thick with an ancient presence, something that had been waiting, something dark and malevolent. She entered the manor grounds, the overgrown weeds crunching beneath her boots, and was met with an overwhelming sense of silence. It was as though the entire world had paused. The manor was still, but Anna could sense that it was anything but empty. Her pulse quickened as the wind howled louder, and she found herself drawn to the front door, which was slightly ajar. She hesitated for a moment, her heart racing, but then she pushed it open. The creak of the door sent a chill through her, but she stepped inside. It was colder than she expected, the air thick with mildew and dust. Her flashlight barely cut through the darkness, but she was determined to explore. Each step felt heavier as she ventured deeper into the house, drawn by the feeling that something or someone was waiting for her. As Anna ventured deeper into the manor, the oppressive atmosphere seemed to grow stronger. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the walls seemed to close in on her with each step. She passed through rooms filled with ancient furniture, rotting wood, and forgotten remnants of the past. The manor had the feeling of a place that time had forsaken, as if it had been abandoned mid-life. Dust covered everything and there were cobwebs in every corner. It was as though the house had been untouched for decades, its once beautiful architecture now a crumbling shell of its former self. As Anna explored, she felt the overwhelming sensation that she wasn't alone. The feeling of being watched gnawed at her, but she couldn't shake her curiosity. She pushed forward, ignoring the creeping fear that threatened to take over. Her flashlight beam flickered and died, plunging her into darkness, but she refused to turn back. She fumbled in her bag, pulling out a spare flashlight and flicking it on again, its weak beam casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. Then, she stumbled upon it. In the center of the manor stood a large, circular room. At its heart was an altar, a stone slab stained dark with something that looked like dried blood. Around the altar were strange symbols carved into the stone, symbols that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. The walls were lined with more symbols, and candles stood in various places, their wax long since melted and hardened. Despite the cold, the room felt hot, suffocating, as though the air itself was thick with dark power. Anna approached the altar, slowly, her pulse quickening. She didn't know what she was expecting, but this room felt like the heart of the manor, the place where something terrible had happened. She touched the altar, her fingers brushing against the cold stone. As soon as she did, a wave of cold washed over her, and she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. It was then that she heard it. A voice, low and guttural, seemed to echo through the room. "Who dares disturb my slumber?" Anna's heart skipped a beat. She spun around, but the room was empty. The voice, though, grew louder, as if it was coming from the very walls, the air itself. Anna's body froze as the voice continued, its tone growing darker, more sinister with each word. "You seek power, mortal. You seek what you cannot control. The price is steep. Do you accept?" The voice seemed to come from every corner of the room surrounding her. It was a deep, guttural sound like the growl of some monstrous beast, and it sent chills down her spine. Anna's mind raced. She had heard the stories, the demon Elias Blackwood had summoned, the entity that promised power in exchange for a soul. The thought of gaining such power filled her with both fear and desire. In that moment, Anna felt an irresistible pull toward the dark energy that filled the room. She wanted to understand the rituals, to gain the knowledge that had consumed Elias Blackwood. She could feel the power, ancient and boundless, waiting for her to claim it. The cold air grew even more biting, and she could see her breath misting in front of her. She shuddered, but her curiosity overpowered her fear. "I accept," she whispered, barely able to breathe the words. The instant the words left her mouth, the room seemed to shift. A blinding light filled the space, so bright that Anna had to close her eyes. The air grew heavier, and the ground beneath her feet trembled. The altar before her began to glow with an unearthly light, and Anna felt her skin prickle as the energy swirled around her. The presence in the room seemed to grow stronger, closer, until she felt as though the very walls were closing in on her. A dark figure emerged from the shadows, its form shifting and writhing, too monstrous to be human. It was the demon, the entity that Elias Blackwood had summoned. "You have chosen," the demon's voice echoed, its tone filled with satisfaction. "Now you belong to me." The light that had once surrounded Anna now seemed to collapse inward, drawing her in. The room shifted and distorted around her, becoming a twisted, nightmarish version of itself. The stone walls darkened, and the air grew thick with an oppressive weight. Shadows that hadn't been there before seemed to writhe in the corners of her vision. The air was suffocating, each breath filling her lungs with the stench of death and decay. Anna tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. She stumbled backward, desperate to escape, but her feet felt as though they were sinking into the floor. The shadows reached out for her, grabbing her legs, pulling her back toward the altar. Panic gripped her chest as she realized that she couldn't move. She was trapped. "Leave me alone," she tried to shout, but her voice was barely a whisper. The darkness only grew stronger, swallowing her whole. The demon's voice echoed around her, now louder and more menacing. "You cannot escape me, mortal. The curse has taken hold. You are bound to me just as Elias Blackwood was. Your soul is mine." Anna's body convulsed, and she felt her mind slip away as the demon's power seeped into her soul. Her vision blurred as she saw the twisted, skeletal figure of Elias Blackwood standing before her. His hollow eyes locked onto hers, and he grinned, a grotesque, permanent sneer. "Welcome to your eternity," he whispered. And then, the darkness consumed her. Days passed, and the villagers began to notice something strange. The manor, which had long been abandoned, seemed to stir with life once again. Lights flickered in the windows at night, and strange whispers seemed to carry on the wind, but when anyone dared to approach, the manor was as silent as it had always been. The sense of dread and evil that hung around the manor was stronger than ever. Anna, however, had vanished without a trace. No one saw her again, and though the villagers searched for her, they found nothing but the remains of the manor, as if it were a place trapped in time. There was only one clue, a blood-stained book left behind in the center of the ritual room. The pages were filled with cryptic symbols and dark warnings, warnings that no one dared to decipher. Anna had made the same mistake as Elias Blackwood. She had sought power, but in doing so she had bound her soul to the same curse that had consumed the man before her. The manor remained haunted by the demon's presence, and the curse of Blackwood continued to claim anyone foolish enough to seek its dark secrets. The legend of Blackwood Manor lived on, and its curse would never be broken.